Shawn McPartland. Irish Lobsters. Irish Lobsters, Shawn McPartland.
Thank you. A young man walking down the seashore in Ireland. And as he looks ahead, he sees a man approaching him carrying 2 buckets. Now, as he gets a little closer, he realizes there's something in the buckets. So he asks the man, "What do you have there?" The guy says, "Oh, I have some lobsters." He said, "Lobsters?" He said, "Aren't you afraid, if you don't have lids or put covers on or anything, that they're just going to crawl out and get away?" He said, "No, I'm sorry. These are Irish lobsters." He says, "Irish lobsters?" He said, "Yeah. When one tries to crawl out, the others just pull them back in." Thank you, Mrs. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. Do you have some Irish lobsters in your life? Perhaps at work, or maybe in your friend group, or maybe even at home. I'd like everyone to take a moment here and ask yourself, am I an Irish lobster? When a friend at work stands up and says, "I'm going to go for that promotion," do you support him or do you pull him back in? When a good friend of yours comes up with a new business idea or a new job opportunity, do you give him advice? Do you encourage him, or do you kind of pull him back down into your bucket? See, I think we're going to have a very small handful of opportunities in our life that we'll look back, and the outcome of those opportunities will greatly impact where we end up in life. I had such an opportunity a number of years ago. I was a carpenter working for a construction company. And this company had 7 or 8 different carpenter crews. And I was one of the newer guys on one of the lower crews. I was actually getting coffee for the guys at break. I was excited to hear that the company announced they were going to interview carpenters to fill one superintendent position, which gave you an opportunity to go out of the carpenter bucket and into a management bucket. What amazed me when I found out I was going to be a candidate is that everyone else, all these other carpenters, knew exactly who was interviewing and when. So when a guy walked back onto the job after that interview, you saw it. You don't want that job. You've got to work long hours. You've got to deal with people. Now, my own father, who has worked as a subcontractor for that company for years, saw many guys come and go in that position. And he said to me, "They will eat you alive." So like most of us, when our parents give us advice, we ponder, and I interviewed, and I got the job. Now, I worked for that company for 5 years. I then jumped out of that bucket and jumped into another bucket and started my own business. And this year marks my 20th year in business. And do you know who my biggest fan is? My father. He was just trying to protect me. But don't let anyone determine what your value in life is going to be. You see, we're all going to end up in the same spot. All we're going to have to tell our story is a simple headstone. And there's not a lot of information on headstones. There's a born date, there's a died date. And those 2 dates are separated by a simple dash. And if that's going to tell your story, do you want that dash to be perfectly polished, to be just out of the box, never been used? Or do you want that dash to be nicked up and dinged up and scuffed up and twisted and bent and crooked? Do you want that dash to reflect your peaks and your valleys and your valleys? You want that thing to be so mangled and worn that when someone looks at your headstone, they say, that person lived a life. Again, don't let anyone determine what your value is in this world. Don't let anyone determine what your ultimate potential is and should be. As parents, isn't that all we want out of our kids, is for them to realize their full potential? Isn't that all we should be striving for? If you find yourself in a bucket in life where you no longer hope, where you no longer find joy, and where you no longer dream, find a way to reach up as high as you can, clip those claws to the rim of that bucket, and get out of that bucket. Get out of that bucket. Get out of that bucket before you kick the bucket. Mrs. Contest Chair.